I got Nico Jenkins. I got you.
He's had power over my life for 4 years, and I've struggled for 4 years.
50 years to run consecutive to all murder convictions at counts 1, 4, 7.
If you read much about serial killers, they go through what they call the different phases.
Behind every face, there's a story. But what if that story is one of unimaginable horror? Today, we're diving into the lives of 10 of the most dangerous criminals to ever walk the earth. From ruthless masterminds of terror to chilling serial killers, these individuals left a trail of fear, death, and chaos. Their names will haunt you. Their crimes will shock you. Are you ready to meet the worst of the worst? Thomas Edward Silverstein, born on February 4, 1952, in Long Beach, California, is a name synonymous with violence and unrelenting rage. From an early age, Silverstein's life was shaped by a troubled family dynamic. Raised by his mother, Virginia Conway, who remarried multiple times, Silverstein believed his stepfather, Thomas Conway, was his biological father until the truth was revealed. His eventual adoption by Sid Silverstein gave him his surname, but not a stable upbringing. Bullied as a child and punished severely for showing weakness, Silverstein learned early on to fight back, a lesson that would lead to a life of crime and unimaginable violence. At just 19 years old, Silverstein was incarcerated for armed robbery, his first taste of prison life. But instead of rehabilitation, his brief stint behind bars only hardened him. Following his release, he quickly returned to a life of crime, this time alongside family members, leading to his rearrest in 1977 for multiple armed robberies. This time, his sentence was far harsher: 15 years in the notorious Leavenworth Penitentiary in Kansas, a maximum security facility that would become the backdrop for Silverstein's descent into further darkness. Inside Leavenworth, Silverstein became involved with the Aryan Brotherhood, a violent neo-Nazi prison gang known for its ruthless control over drug smuggling, gambling, and violence. In 1980, Silverstein was convicted of his first murder, killing fellow inmate Danny Atwell, who had refused to smuggle heroin into the prison for the Aryan Brotherhood. This conviction sealed Silverstein's fate, earning him a life sentence in the high-security United States Penitentiary in Marion, Illinois. But Silverstein's reign of terror was far from over. In 1983, he orchestrated the brutal stabbing of correctional officer Merle Klutz, a crime that would earn him an unprecedented punishment: permanent solitary confinement. For the next 36 years, until his death in 2019, Silverstein remained in isolation, becoming a symbol of the darkest side of the American prison system. He spent decades as a ghost in the system, locked away from any human contact, his violent legacy forever etched into the history of American prisons. Nico Allen Jenkins is another name that evokes pure terror. Jenkins's life was steeped in violence and instability from the beginning, growing up in a household where crime and chaos were the norms. At just 15 years old, Jenkins was incarcerated for carjacking, serving 10 years behind bars. However, during his time in prison, Jenkins' mental health issues went largely unaddressed, a dangerous oversight that would later unleash catastrophic consequences upon his release. After being freed on July 30, 2013, Jenkins wasted no time descending into a murderous rampage. Over the course of just 10 days, he lured 4 innocent people to their deaths in what became one of Omaha's most shocking killing sprees. His first 2 victims, Jorge C. Cajiga Ruiz and Juan Uribe Pena, were lured to a remote area with the promise of an encounter, only to be shot in the head at point-blank range. Their bodies were found abandoned in a truck, sparking fear across the city. Jenkins' third victim, Curtis Bradford, was a former prison acquaintance. The two were even photographed together just one day before Jenkins murdered him in cold blood. But the horror didn't stop there. On August 21st, Jenkins brutally shot 33-year-old Andrea Kruger, a mother of 3, with a 12-gauge shotgun, leaving her lifeless body in the street. These senseless killings sent shockwaves through the community, and Jenkins was soon arrested. What made Jenkins' case even more disturbing was his bizarre claim during interrogation. He said he was acting under the orders of an ancient serpent god named Apophis, adding a chilling, almost mythical twist to his already horrific crimes. His trial became a spectacle, as Jenkins, representing himself, behaved erratically, speaking in tongues, laughing during testimony, and showing no remorse. Sentenced to death, Jenkins now serves as a stark reminder of the system's failure to address mental illness. Alvin "Creepy" Karpis. Alvin Francis Karpowicz, known to the world as Alvin Karpis, was born on August 10, 1907, in Montreal, Canada. But it wasn't long before he made a name for himself as one of America's most wanted criminals. Karpis's criminal career began in his teens, running with gamblers and bootleggers before escalating to bank robbery and murder. By the 1930s, Karpis had partnered with Fred Barker to form the infamous Barker-Karpis Gang, a criminal syndicate that terrorized the Midwest during the Great Depression. The gang specialized in bank robberies, kidnappings, and murders, with Karpis quickly gaining a reputation for being ruthless and calculating. The FBI's relentless pursuit of Karpis and his gang reached its peak after the kidnapping of Edward Bremer, a wealthy businessman whose abduction caught the attention of President Franklin D. Roosevelt himself. The heat was on, and the FBI, led by J. Edgar Hoover, made it their mission to bring Karpis down. In 1936, Karpis was finally captured in New Orleans after a dramatic shootout, making headlines nationwide. He was sentenced to life imprisonment and spent an astounding 26 years in the infamous Alcatraz prison. Karpis, once a feared criminal mastermind, became one of the longest-serving inmates at Alcatraz. After his release in 1969, he found himself a relic of a bygone era, struggling to adapt to the modern world. He was eventually deported to Canada and later moved to Spain, where he died under mysterious circumstances in 1979, marking the end of one of the most notorious criminal lives in American history. Charles Bronson, Michael Gordon Peterson on December 6, 1952. Charles Bronson is widely considered the most violent prisoner in the UK. From an early age, Bronson was known for his violent outbursts, and his life of crime began in earnest after he was sentenced to prison for robbing a post office in 1974. However, it was during his time behind bars that Bronson truly made a name for himself. His erratic behavior, combined with his frequent attacks on guards and fellow inmates, earned him a reputation as one of the most dangerous men in the British prison system. Bronson's most notorious moments include a series of hostage situations, where he would take guards and inmates captive in a bid to draw attention to his demands. In one such incident, he held a prison librarian hostage, threatening to kill him unless his requests were met. His violent outbursts and unpredictable behavior led to him being shuffled between various high-security prisons, each one struggling to contain his aggressive nature. Despite his violent tendencies, Bronson has become somewhat of a cult figure in the UK, thanks in part to his artistic pursuits and his book Solitary Fitness, which outlines his intense workout routines. His story was even adapted into a critically acclaimed film starring Tom Hardy. Today, Bronson remains in prison, a symbol of both violence and the human capacity for resilience, as he continues to fight against the system that has tried and failed to break him. Richard Kuklinski, better known as the Iceman, was a contract killer who worked for various mafia families, including the notorious Gambino family. Born in 1935 in New Jersey, Kuklinski's childhood was marked by extreme abuse at the hands of his father. This early trauma shaped him into a remorseless killer, capable of unimaginable brutality. Kuklinski's moniker, the Iceman, came from his method of freezing his victims' bodies to obscure their time of death, making it harder for authorities to track him down. Throughout his criminal career, Kuklinski claimed to have killed over 200 people, using various methods ranging from cyanide poisoning to stabbing and shooting. Kuklinski was eventually arrested in 1986 after an undercover operation by law enforcement. His chilling interviews from prison revealed the cold, methodical mindset of a killer who showed no remorse. He died in prison in 2006, leaving behind a legacy of fear and brutality. Pedro Alonso Lopez is one of the deadliest serial killers in history, with a confirmed body count of over 110 young girls and estimates of his total victims exceeding 300. Born in 1948 in Colombia, Lopez's life of violence began in his early teens, when he was expelled from his home and became a street criminal. His twisted pattern of kidnapping, raping, and killing young girls stretched across Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. Lopez was captured in 1980 when a flash flood uncovered some of his victims' bodies. His confession shocked authorities as he calmly detailed the extent of his crimes. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, but was released in 1998 after serving only 20 years, an act that incited international outrage. His current whereabouts are unknown, and the possibility that he may still be committing crimes remains a chilling thought. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, one of the most powerful and feared drug lords in history, rose to infamy as the leader of the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico. Born in 1957 in the rugged hills of Sinaloa, Guzman built a vast empire of drug trafficking, responsible for smuggling billions of dollars worth of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and marijuana into the United States. El Chapo's ruthless approach to maintaining power involved countless murders, including brutal acts against rivals, government officials, and even civilians. His ability to evade capture became legendary. He escaped from prison twice, once through a tunnel under his cell, and later in a daring helicopter escape. After years of manhunts and violent confrontations with authorities, El Chapo was finally recaptured in 2016 and extradited to the United States, where he was sentenced to life imprisonment. Despite being confined in one of the most secure prisons in the world, El Chapo's legacy and the power of the Sinaloa cartel continue to cast a long shadow over the global drug trade. Ted Kaczynski, also known as the Unabomber, is one of America's most infamous domestic terrorists. Born in 1942, Kaczynski was a math prodigy and attended Harvard University at just 16 years old. However, as a young adult, he became increasingly disillusioned with modern technology and industrial society. In the 1970s, Kaczynski retreated to a cabin in rural Montana, where he began a years-long bombing campaign targeting universities, airlines, and individuals he believed were contributing to the destruction of the environment. From 1978 to 1995, Kaczynski carried out 16 bombings that killed 3 people and injured dozens more. His manifesto, Industrial Society and Its Future, was published by major newspapers at his insistence. Andrei Chikatilo, known as the Butcher of Rostov, was one of the most prolific and feared serial killers in Soviet history. Born in 1936 in Ukraine, Chikatilo's childhood was marked by famine and hardship, and his early life was filled with humiliation and rejection. Despite appearing to lead a normal life as a schoolteacher and family man, Chikatilo harbored dark and violent urges. Between 1978 and 1990, Chikatilo was responsible for the brutal murders of at least 52 women and children across Russia, Ukraine, and Uzbekistan. His modus operandi involved luring his victims into isolated areas where he would savagely assault, mutilate, and kill them. Chikatilo's reign of terror struck fear throughout the Soviet Union as the authorities struggled to catch the killer amidst bureaucratic incompetence. Chikatilo was finally arrested in 1990 after a massive manhunt. His chilling confessions during his trial revealed the true extent of his depravity, earning him the death sentence. He was executed by firing squad in 1994, but his horrifying legacy lives on as one of the most notorious serial killers in modern history. These infamous inmates serve as haunting reminders of the extreme consequences of crime and the fragility of the human psyche. Whether driven by power, madness, or pure evil, these men have left behind legacies of terror that will not soon be forgotten. As we reflect on their stories, we are forced to confront the darkest corners of humanity, where violence reigns supreme and redemption seems all but impossible. Who among these notorious criminals sends the most chills down your spine? Share your thoughts in the comments below.